So today I'm going to tell a little story, and I'm gonna parallel the story of the literary app with my own personal journey as a researcher. Let me just put my the timer here so I don't go over. Yeah, so we're gonna our road today has three main parts. So the first I will uh, talk about the rise of the literary apps, the main features and children's money making with this work. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the decline of this production and some of the reasons behind it. And third, I'm going to present my current research project, which is about the preservation of digital children's literature, especially Brazilian digital children's literature. So the story I'm going to tell is the story of a new, potentially disruptive form of storytelling for children that generated great enthusiasm in children's literature scholarship in the 2010s, but then progressively declined. Today, new releases are rare, and many of the groundbreaking, often award-winning works have simply disappeared. This art form went by many names. I prefer the term literary app because it foregrounds the literary experience while acknowledging that an app has a unique technological set of features that differentiate it from ebooks and websites. Others prefer terms such as picturebook apps, storybook apps, interactive ebooks, and so on. It goes by many names. The literary app became possible with the release of the iPhone in 2007, and the surprise by Winged Chariot is the first known example of its kind, and it was released even before the release of the iPad in 2009, so it was really thought for the iPhone. But with the larger, bright touchscreen of the iPad, released in 2010, is that this form gained prominence. Many scholars, often from the field of picture book studies, were amazed by the possibilities of this format, which allowed animations, video, sound, music, audio, audio and image recording, movement, geolocation, and many other features to be integrated into children's literature. This story that I'm going to tell about the literary app parallels my own personal story as a children's literature scholar. And in 2012, I began my master's in children's literature at the University of British Columbia, enchanted by the possibilities of this art form and eager to understand how it worked. And here I selected some quotes from early works regarding literary apps that show this enthusiasm that was around at the time. So in terms of technological products, never before has a device come so close to total design. And this is what Barbara Bader talks about the picture book as total design. In addition, the focus on adding more to, as opposed to taking away from, that total design is where the innovation of the iPad lies. In its similarities to the picture book, it is unlike any technological product that has come before. This was Al Yakut, which was one of the first researchers to write about this production. And she wrote again with Maria Nikolaeva in 2018. And they said, potentially, this trend may result in a wholly new aesthetic form. Original apps use various artistic devices that would be impossible to remediate into printed form. And then Carioli also said that these interactive electronic books represent the true new frontier territory for narration, the space within which the innate metaphoric energy of children's literature classics can marry the astonishing formulas of contemporary technology. So we see the excitement that literary apps brought to the field, and I was part of it, and I really wanted to understand this production. And it was indeed a world of possibilities, and works such as the fantastic Flying Books of Maurice Lesmore, a story initially told as an Oscar-winning short animated film, which became the much commented and researched literary app. Traditional publishers such as Kate Wilson, which previously had experience at Macmillan, Scholastic, these big publishers, started her own publishing house, Nosy Crawl, with a department devoted to these apps. And the classic fairy tale series that Nosy Crawl published won many awards and became an example of what we would consider a good literary app. In 2015, Spot by the award-winning author and illustrator David Wisner was released, and many of us were awed by the potential for storytelling of this art form, taking the wordless picture book concept to a new level. And I will now show a brief video so you can have a grasp if you don't know what this is about. Of course, Spot is a very disruptive app. It's not the average app, but I thought it was. I always think it's a good example to show what can be done, and it's a very rich experience.
The idea for creating Spot as an app happened in a real aha moment standing in an Apple store when I saw an iPad for the first time. And I realized that you could pinch something to make it larger. And that was the moment at which I realized that this device could be the solution to a story idea that I had been exploring since I was a student at the Rhode Island School of Design back in the late 70s. And that this pinching didn't just have to make some text larger, that I could keep going deeper and deeper and deeper into other worlds. And for me, it was just like, the skies opened and here it was, the solution to this story that I've been pursuing for so long. Spot offers a chance to experience these different worlds in a way that is completely up to each individual person. They choose where to go, they choose what storyline to follow, which world to enter, and what wherever their imagination wants to take them. The most important part of this was that story was paramount. There were no games, no puzzles, nothing to prevent anyone from getting from one place to another.
Yeah, so this is just a small sample for you to have a grasp of what kind of experience I'm talking about. And very quickly, it became obvious that the possibilities were numerous and that literary apps could be very different from each other because there were so many resources to integrate. The use of certain resources such as augmented reality, geolocation, and the creation of virtual reality experiences expanded these possibilities even further. Today, as we would expect, AI has also become a possibility in the literary app landscape, and we have apps that create personalized stories using LLM models. These works also exist side by side other forms of literature in digital format, from the simple to the enriched ebook, with added but limited video, sound, and interactivity. And there are also web-based works, which also often are more limited in terms of multimedia and interactive experience because apps are actually software, so you can integrate these features in more complex ways than you could with a website. Although we had an era before the app era with the Flash technology, which allowed very integrated multimedia and interactive experience. This is a chapter for another talk. An Animate Alice that I show here at the slide is one example of a very complex web-based work. But then this landscape of production led to two main questions in children's literature scholarship. How do literary apps work, which echoes the Marie Nikolaevas and Carol Scott, how picture books work and all the work in picture book theory. But also how do children read these literary apps? And I will briefly talk about some concepts so we can understand a little bit better this production before we continue the story of the literary app. So the first two aspects that are central are in the literary app textuality are its multimodality and in its interactivity. So these are multimodal interactive texts, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about these two concepts. But there are other concepts that are very useful, such as hybrid narratives, because they blend different narrative strategies from film, from games. They are coded text. They are intangible. But still material. So there is this false idea that they would be immaterial, but the materiality of the literary app comes from its multimodality, from the device, and from the context in which it is used. So in terms of multimodality, if picture books have a multimodal ecology, as David Lewis suggested, the literary app has this ecology expanded and beyond, and it goes beyond text, image, and design to include speech, music, sound effects in the auditory layer. We also have the moving image with animation and film added to the static image of the picture book. And writing, so image and writing would form this layer of visual modalities. And we have also readers' gestures, which are used to orchestrate and to orchestrate to certain levels these modes through interactivity, but also playing an important representational role in many apps. Each of these semiotic modes come with their affordances and propose new possibilities for meaning making and for the construction of this literary text. So the multimodality is very complex. But then we also have the interactivity. So furthermore, these works are interactive texts, which means that they change as readers participate in them, creating complete feedback loops. So it's not just simply this relationship that we have in meaning making that Rosenblatt called a transaction, but we often think also as interaction. So it's not just this exchange in meaning making, but really in participating in the text and changing how this text unfolds in front of us. And Zhao and Unsworth described the interactions of literary apps in three moments. So starting with the performative act, so the gesture that's performed by the reader, a gesture that culminates in the activation of the text. So there is a touch or sound, some form of connection, which then leads the work to respond with some sort of change in the narrative. And the types of interactivity and the levels of transformation and co-construction that they permit were discussed by different scholars such as Celia Tourion, Ture Schwabs, and in fact, different uses of interactivity can lead to significantly different reading experiences. We will not have time to go through this, but there is very interesting research in this area of the role of interactivity in the literary app. Then with regards to how children read these texts, I have personally explored this question in my PhD, in which I worked with 4-year-olds reading literary apps with a parent in a public library in England. And I followed a multimodal social semiotics framework in this research. And these observations led to 3 major concepts that I like to use to conceptualize this reading experience: embodiment, agency, and the affect emotional dimension. First of all, all reading is embodied, but the reading experience of literary apps explores this embodied nature of reading and a nature that is especially relevant in the early years when children engage very physically with books and with narrative. And it promotes a reading experience in which the body of the reader is actually integrated into the text. It is part of the text of the literary app, because the gestures they perform are also signs which help tell this story, and which position the reader as a key participant in it, often with very clear roles, depending on the app. Agency is also a central aspect of meaning making broadly, as highlighted by Rosenblatt, by Günter Kress, and other authors. But with these interactive texts, readers have to negotiate their agency in different ways, because the interactions, they are pre-established by the app's designers. So this was a big question. Are readers really agentive when the interactions are pre-designed? Readers will engage with this framework that is created in the interactive design. And this often leads to a very successful, joyful experience, interactive experience. But what I saw in my observations, and which was very interesting, is how readers can also subvert the script, how they reappropriate the texts in their own terms, and how they use these interactivity in ways which were not prescribed by the app itself. So, but readers also, I was working with a shared reading situation, and another layer of agency is the one that in which readers have to negotiate this agency with their co-readers. So who becomes the main interactor, what kinds of interactions are allowed, or the intensity of it, because children can become very physical and the device is fragile. Is there a right or wrong way of interacting, how parents mediate it, and how children will then negotiate this participation also with the co-reader, which was very interesting. And finally, this embodied engagement with the apps and the co-readers and this agentic participation also led to, was also linked to how these stories affect readers and provoke emotions in readers. So the emotions shared with the co-readers and how this participation enhanced this emotional layer with the narrative formed an essential facet of this experience with literary apps. So these three concepts, they are intertwined and they affect each other. Which was the conclusion of my research. So now that we have grasped some key ideas and concepts around literary apps and how children read them, let's get back to the story of the literary app. So as a researcher, as years went by, I noticed that the enthusiasm around literary apps started to fade a little bit. And this was very kind of quick. Like in 5-6 years, we already saw that less apps were being produced. And the term business model was frequent in interactions with publishers and creators. Towards the end of the decade, many apps stopped being available. And in 2008, Nosy Kroll, which I mentioned was one of the most recognized app developers of this kind, closed the app department. So the crisis became very clear at that moment. And here the slides show some of the screens that appeared when we tried to connect to certain works today. And this website here, I know it's small, but it's just an example. And I thought it was very funny that it's a Brazilian publisher and they call the app Out of Print. So I thought it was funny that we don't even have the vocabulary to describe what's happening, or these apps are disappearing, why, how. So another question that emerged was then why did these works, which many believed would be the future, of course, with a lot of consideration around this future, but the future of children's literature, how did they start disappearing? And this is not a simple question to answer, and I'm going to try here, but we need a systemic view of publishing and of societal changes to try to grasp what happened. And I will describe mostly the Brazilian system because and context is important. The systems are different in different countries, but I think most of the issues that I will present can be found globally. And the publishing ecosystem has been in place for centuries. Authors, illustrators, publishers, and other professionals create books which are then commercialized through bookstores, wholesalers, and rich families, But in case of Brazil, most importantly, these books reach schools and the government. The government in Brazil plays a central role in seeking to secure access to books and education for all children. So they buy books to distribute to public schools. And then schools and libraries are these very important places that promote literacy and reading and create readers, hopefully lifelong readers, or create maybe is not the best word, but help support that these readers develop themselves as readers through education and through reading promotion, and of course also through reading habits and the experiences with their families. But children's literature also depends on an appraisal system in which awards play an important role, but also media reviews and academic research. And this system helps teachers, librarians, and families understand what is available and develop a sense of quality standards for children's literature. As I said, in Brazil, the government has this important role in sustaining this ecosystem, especially in terms of the publishing market, purchasing millions of books every year for free distribution to public schools. Although reading levels in the country are low and have been progressively falling, there is still this common belief that books are essential to education and to children's aesthetic, cognitive, and emotional development. When we shift to the ecosystem of digital children's literature, we see important changes, and we see that there is disruption in many of these areas, which help understand why they did not survive as a product and then as an artistic creation to a certain level. So in apps, in creation and production, of literary apps, it requires an even more multidisciplinary team than print books, which includes animators, programmers, musicians, etc. So these are extremely expensive products to create, and they then require more investment with a very high risk. And this is a lot more investment than we would see with traditional books. And unlike print books, a work is not finished when it is published in this case, because big tech companies release new devices and update their operating systems every year. So apps also need to be constantly updated, otherwise they risk being removed from the app stores. So there is more investment, and this investment needs to be continuous in order for these products to remain available. And then we go to the app stores, and app stores are very different from bookstores. Bookstores, they sell books primarily, but app stores, they sell all kinds of apps, from banking to yoga, social media, shopping. And in the middle of all these, we have the children's literary apps. And these are rarely highlighted in the app stores. They were really like lost in the midst of all these apps for various purposes. With apps and regarding this commercialization side of things, it's important to say that there is also this expectation regarding digital products that they will be very cheap or free. And there is this idea that in theory, you can reach millions of users with digital products, which you would not do with a print book. However, reaching overseas markets is not as easy as it may seem, especially for a publishing industry, which is small, is usually local, and especially when apps are so difficult to find in the stores in the first place. And these are new products, right? Apps, literary apps were new products, and they were trying to create new reading habits. But so it was harder for people to go looking for them in the app store and to go scavenging them when they were not even familiar with the concept. Here, criticism would did play an important role. There were new awards recognizing literary apps, as well as blogs with reviews. But these initiatives did not seem to have reached a large enough scale, or perhaps reached this scale fast enough in order to bring sales to the levels needed for these apps as commercial products to sustain themselves. But this was also very quick. There was not like in 5-6 years, there's not a lot of effort to continue for a longer period of time. That's important to say too. Sorry, I lost here. Then in schools, many teachers were unaware of these productions or unprepared to use them. Libraries never really had the infrastructure to make these literary apps available to the public. So very few libraries had iPads that you could borrow and access them. I lived in Canada and Vancouver Public Library, which is amazing. Actually, they had a library which had these iPads with the apps, which was a very rare situation. And I have not found it elsewhere after that. But in parallel to this more economic publishing side of things development, it's important to consider social and cultural changes that came with this digital revolution. The social cultural changes emerging around technology in childhood are a very important context here to also understand why literary apps did not succeed. The rapid adoption of smartphones and tablets led to fast social and cultural changes. As their use intensified, concerns also grew, especially regarding children and young people. Excessive use of technology, particularly social media and games, and the shifts in social and cultural dynamics related to the heavy use of smartphones contribute to the rise of anti-tech discourses, especially in childhood. While specialists highlighted that quality of digital engagement is as important as quantity, still notions such as screen time dominated the conversation. So this created this idea that we should, if we have another option of literary experience, which was the print book, why should we use another digital product and increase screen time? So for most families, including literary apps in their reading habits did not make much sense, since those habits were already centered on print books, which they loved. They knew how to use. They could easily access in libraries and bookshops. So this context also shows how reaching this audience it was not easy, and more and more it became an issue that of producing content for especially young children on screens. So this myriad of factors, alongside with others that I won't have time to tackle here, but this myriad of factors meant that literary apps were not widely adopted. Given the high cost of production, the lack of sustainable business models, many companies decided to stop producing them. And because remaining available required constant updates, many apps gradually started to disappear. So here, when we look, these are the numbers from my current research project. So we mapped more than 50 Brazilian literary apps, but then we look at the availability. We see that in 2025, only two-thirds of these works, only 1/3 of these works are available, 2/3 are no longer available. And there are no systems of preservation for these digital works. And this means that when they are no longer accessible, they usually are not accessible for research, and often not even for the creators, the authors, the editors. Sometimes we ask them and they don't have the files, they don't have any ways of accessing this production anymore. So this leads to the last part of my talk, which is the need to preserve digital children's literature. And this discussion can also involve other forms of digital products for children, games, websites, because the issue of of the disappearance of these works and the changes in technology affect pretty much every digital text. So there are multiple preservation initiatives internationally, and here I'm going to talk only about digital literature. So the Electronic Literature Organization, ELO, has 4 collections of digital literature. The last one was published in 2022. One issue is that a lot of these international works have very little Latin American or Brazilian works. So groups of Brazilian and Latin American scholars started developing their own projects. So in 2021, we had the publication of the Digital Cartography of Latin American Digital Literature. And we have also the LIT-ILAT, which is the Latin American Digital Literature Network, which involves researchers, producers. And LIT-ILAT has 2 anthologies. One that was published in 2020, and as Mateus mentioned, I collaborated as one of the editors of the 2025 volume, the volume 2. And in Brazil, we also have an initiative that is called the Atlas of Brazilian Digital Literature. Which is these projects, they are set in time, so they collect a number of works and they finish a collection. The Atlas is an ongoing project from Professor Regiane Rocha in Brazil, and since 2019, they have been mapping the Brazilian digital literature production from its origins to current production. But all these initiatives that I showed, they have very few digital children's literature. They are mostly, it will not be ideal to call them mainstream or adult, but they are productions that do not have children as their main audience. So with the goal of preserving the social, historical, and cultural documents, which are the digital digital children's literature, and maintaining our national literary heritage, allowing for the continuation of research on digital children's literature and for a better understanding of this production, I created in 2021 the DigitaLIJ project, which is a collection devoted to Brazilian digital children's literature, which is being developed in partnership with the Atlas of Brazilian Digital Literature, because I thought it was better to work together rather than start a new initiative. The website is still not available, but we are in the last stages of, and we will publish the first version with the first body of works mapped very soon, in the next months, hopefully. Our first aim is to map, register, and catalog this production so we can deepen the analysis of these works and begin to build a history of Brazilian digital children's literature. The project also aims to inform educators about the possibilities of digital literature in the classroom, helping them find works that are still available, and there are works still available. And in addition to the database and the website, we have developed other teacher training materials, and I did that mostly with Professor Gisele Lima de Moraes. And we also have an Instagram account where we publicize the works that are available, also historical works. We have interviews with creators, and we discuss key concepts related to this production so that teachers and a wider audience can understand what this is about. And we share news about this preservation initiative. So far we have 147 works mapped, and this number grew recently because we found this collection, this directory of children's CD-ROMs that was created by a Brazilian. He's not a researcher. He's just a fan of children's CD-ROMs, and he started this initiative. And so these are all CD-ROMs published in Brazil in Portuguese, although there are translations and that were created internationally. So this enlarged the number of works that we discovered, and we thought, well, were lost forever, like CD-ROMs. We don't even have the computer to read them anymore, but Vinicius is working on that. And with a network of people interested in these productions, that he has been recovering a lot of these CD-ROMs. But in terms of apps and web-based works, which is mostly what we have cataloged, we have now more than 83 works. And we have developed a very detailed taxonomy with 49 categories of descriptors, from simple things such as title, authorship, publisher, to technological and digital features, audience, aesthetic features, synopsis, awards, critical works that mention these productions, and lots of others descriptors, which help us start mapping this from more of a distant view of this production. And here I want to thank my undergrad students over the years, because this is a very laborious project, and the help of the undergrad researchers has been very important, and I want to thank them for their work. And so also another part of this initiative is including video recordings of most works. So initiative preservations have discussed which are the best ways to preserve this production, and video is a system that has maintained its functionality over the years. So it's usually most durable in terms of preservation, but of course it has limitations in terms of experiencing the interactivity of the works. But we have then made recordings. We have this collection. So this photo is this collection of tablets that we have, and that over the years we collected these works, and we cannot update these devices. They are closed collections. But then we have in these collections, in these devices, works, especially apps that not even the producers have anymore. So, but some works that we have mapped, we were not able to recover at all. So we can only talk about them, but without seeing what they were like, because the files are lost and they are kind of gone forever. But we have also been reaching out to creators and their families, trying to recover files and develop ways of emulating, especially more ancient works such as CD-ROMs, like I said, and Flash-based productions, which were websites in Flash. And regarding the video, we had to make some decisions about what we would record. And so we consider some conceptual aspects of digital children's literature in order to make these decisions. So taking into consideration that digital literature is a performance, like Nagel said in this very interesting article of 2018. And like I mentioned in my research, I highlight how these works promote a significantly embodied and agentive reading experience. We always include, we do not do only screen captures, we always include the hands of the reader and sometimes other parts of the body that are important in making this connection between reader and text visible in the videos. And we are also beginning an initiative to record actual children reading these works, because we recognize that the child experience with these works is very different from these demonstrative videos that we've been recording. So we want to also map the child experience with this project. So we've been including also these videos of the child readers. So our story ends here for now, and of course, this is not the end of digital children's literature or of literary apps, but they have become a much narrower production and have been kept into more alternative circles rather than mainstream children's literature. And as this story shows, among other things, how technological development and the possibilities it creates for artistic and literary expression can be exciting. However, for these works to become part of children's media and literary ecology more broadly, multiple social, cultural, and economic conditions have to be met. In the capitalist world in which we inhabit, artistic expression is often dependent on economic value in order to exist. So digital children's literature will not cease to exist, and today it often finds space in more academic or alternative circuits. This is also my story as a researcher of digital children's literature. And in order to keep tracking this phenomenon, which shifted significantly and didn't go the ways we expected, I had to kind of reinvent myself over the years, exploring new theoretical and methodological frameworks, looking at readers, texts, publishing, public opinion, and the ecosystem of children's literature more broadly. Research has an important role not only in mapping this phenomena, but also in preserving this production and promoting reflection on the contemporary landscape of children's literature. Obrigada. Thank you very much. And these are my contacts. And I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to the questions now.
Thank you so much for this absolutely fascinating talk. Really, really. Yeah, I kept on thinking. I kept on comparing the Brazilian case to the countries that I'm more familiar with, and we've already exchanged a few messages with Aline Frederico, thinking about Poland and the Polish context. So you have already inspired us. Thank you so much. Yeah. So now it's time for some questions, and you can stop sharing your presentation so we can, if that's not a problem. So we'll see you instead. Wonderful, wonderful. Yes. So if there are questions, just don't hesitate and just either write them down in the chat or just raise your digital hand. We have many options of asking questions. Yeah, so of course I do have tons of questions, but you know how it is. We always have questions, don't we, as scholars? And also, I think that we're all scholars, but we're also naturally curious people, because I think that in order to become a scholar, you have to be curious, you have to be interested in a variety of different things. So I definitely am curious and interested in what you have just talked about. So can you tell us something more about because the project, the digital project that you talked about focuses specifically on Brazilian digital children's literature. Have you identified any distinctly Brazilian aesthetic or pedagogical, cultural characteristics in these works that differentiate them from, let's say, Anglophone or European traditions of digital children's literature? Because considering your expertise and the fact that you get your degrees in Anglophone countries, I'm sure that you're very much familiar with the Western Anglophone context.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's noticeable that there are differences, and some differences are in terms of the limits of the use of technology, really, because in Latin America, and this is something that we discuss a lot in the Latin American context, that often the technologies used and how they are used, they tend to be technologies that are more widely available and that require less resources to create. So that's interesting, and that creates we see less of this fully immersive, like VR type of experience is much rarer in Brazil and Latin America. And we see it more grounded in the picture book tradition, especially. But and of course there are thematic aspects as well. I think we see Brazil and Latin America in general, in our culture, orality is very important. So one feature that most Brazilian apps have that we don't see internationally is the feature of audio recording, that readers can record their own versions of the stories. We have one Brazilian app that's called Inventeca, which are wordless picture books, and it's a data, not a database, but like a library of wordless picture books in which you are invited to create your own narration via audio, and then you can share that with your parents. So the voice and the oral aspect of these readings is very much highlighted in the Brazilian production in ways that is not so much. I don't see it so much in the Anglophone context, for example.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Maybe I can ask, because we also had some literary apps, as you call them, in Poland, and as we talked earlier, but I think that our society was not ready for this. And in Poland, there were mainly adaptations of, some classical poetry, classical picture books. And how does it look in Brazil? Are these also adaptations of previous texts, or rather some new texts, written especially for apps?
Yeah, I think this is a trend internationally, that classic fairy tales, classic works, they were widely adapted, and here it was the same. There are some original stories created only for the digital environment, but mostly they were adaptations. And this is something we see a lot in scholarship as well, how we consider that there is a lot of innovation, but at the same time, it feels like we are always connected to the tradition of children's literature with these works. And I think there are many reasons for this, and one is simply this recognition that this is a continuous of children's literature, because sometimes you show people these works and they say, well, this is not literature, this is not reading, and then when you connect them to traditional tales, this relationship becomes more explicit. But there are also because I studied publishing, I have to say that there are also copyright issues, because classic works like fairy tales, they are copyright free, so this impacts the cost of production as well. But I think it's very interesting that many countries that I observed, that the classical tales and classic literature is available. But it's interesting that poetry is a genre not so explored. Narrative is more explored, stories and narratives and tales more explored than poetry. But there is a lot of potential in digital poetry, and in Brazil, when we had the Flash era, we had one very important work of digital poetry that was completely digital native. It was not an adaptation, and it was very rich with very interesting forms of interactivity, and even it was before the app era.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We have a question from our audience, so please go ahead. And I don't know how to pronounce Kira or Kira. Hello.
Hello there. Hi. I can't actually find the chat function, so maybe other people are having similar problems. But I just wanted to say what a wonderful talk that was, Aline. It was just so I suppose refreshing. I hear so much about the digital future all the time in kind of, I suppose, a university context, and it's really kind of sobering, actually, and just a kind of, as I suppose, a kind of lesson against jumping on bandwagons, maybe. But I just wanted to ask you kind of two things. And one was whether you get a kind of sense of triumphalism from people when you talk to them about this kind of rise and fall of the digital, and a sense of kind of how we knew all along that, print culture would, and so a sense of kind of, so I suppose I'm interested in the kind of emotional responses that you get. And then from what you just said about poetry, it sounds to me like you have quite a sort of feel quite a sense of a kind of ambassadorial role towards or about digital apps for children, and that there's still lots more that could be done. So could you maybe say a little bit about those two things?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I think there's one thing when it's that a lot of people think that because I study digital children's literature that I oppose. I want them to replace picture books, or of course, absolutely not the case. I'm fascinated by picture books. That's actually how I entered children's literature research. And I think there is a little bit of this discourse, and I think we're living a moment right now in which books are being presented as this anti-digital solution, right? Especially for young people with social media, all these discussions about mental health and the issues with the excessive use of digital technology. And books are being presented as this print books as this solution, but I'm always thinking in terms of expanding our aesthetic experiences and quality, especially quality work that can lead us to new ways of engaging with the world, and a world which is heavily digitized. So I always think about what is the role of literature in this heavily digitized world, and how digital literature can help us reflect and think about this digital experience in different ways, in ways which apparently the resources that are most used, or the technologies that are most used, are not allowing us to think, and are leading us to this more addictive, this negative experiences with technology, when it's not technology itself. The technology can allow us to create multiple types of experiences. And I think that literary apps are an option to create more quality digital experiences. And of course, not all literary apps are good either. I'm very critical about it, but I think there were some great works which are no longer available, and there is a lot of potential there. And I wonder if, as history continues, if we will reach a point in the future where this will be reconsidered, and there can be a new effort in developing digital literature in a more broader and more accessible way. Again, I don't know. I won't say that I hope, but I just think there is a lot of potential. And I think some of these experiences in terms of aesthetic value, they are very enriching. And I think we shouldn't close our eyes to these opportunities. And I think when we think about media literacy, I think also the digital literature could play a role. And for instance, in Brazil, we have legal documents regarding digital literacy right now, which I think is necessary, but they do not mention literature at all. And when they talk about media, it's just digital media, but books are also media, and how we think about this more broadly. And I think we need to include print books in media literacy, and we also need to include digital literature in media literacy, which is lacking. So I kind of feel like this ambassadorial role a little bit, and often I have reflected, well, should I continue researching? Because there are so many, as Mateus was saying, there are many exciting things to research, and I have many interests. This is not my only interest. but I kind of felt this pressure of maintaining this history of preserving and not letting go. It's like, oh, I'm the only one with this working on my iPad. I need to do something about it. If my iPad dies, then that's it. So I felt like this responsibility in a way to keep working and to enter this new phase of preservation and I think there are many areas of children's literature that are very marginal, and it's okay also to be marginal. I don't think that's necessarily a problem. So I think for now, this is kind of the place for digital children's literature, but and then we have to see how it will unfold in the future.
Thank you so much for everything that you've said. You've given us all even more room for thoughts. Yeah. So I've also been thinking about AI, generative AI and adaptive storytelling systems. Do you see contemporary AI-driven narrative technologies as in a way, continuation of the literary app tradition, or do they represent a completely, utterly different paradigm for storytelling in children's digital literature and reader participation?
Yeah, it's interesting because AI has been discussed in digital literature for kind of decades now, but not children's literature, just general. And many works from the past 2 decades, at least, they have been working with databases and with the automatic creation of text based on language models and databases, of course, much more restricted than what we see now with LLM. And there has been a lot of discussion about what is authorship in this context. And I think this can actually be, is also another area where literary research could inform a more broader understanding regarding AI. But this is not your question. What I've seen in terms of children's literature so far, I think is still at very early stages, and I think it has not reached the level of quality that I would think that it matches what we have in terms of children's literature in general. I think it's still early stages, and there are many technical issues within it that like the illustrations, they cannot offer a sequence, they are different, and they are all very standardized in terms of artistic quality of illustration. That is something that we value a lot in children's literature. AI is still very flat and poor. And I think it is kind of another direction in comparison to the literary app, which was inspired by the picture book tradition. I think it's more text heavy, and especially because the technology is still poor in terms of image creation. But I think it's going into another direction. It's very interesting in terms of personalizing stories. So in terms of customizing stories, but it kind of what I've seen so far, it is built on formulas and narrative structures that are still a bit limited. But I think there is a lot of potential. I think it might become very interesting. I just haven't seen anything that really caught my attention that much in terms of, oh wow, this is it's a bit different. It's a bit new, but we were also doing customized books with children's names for decades now. So it's not. It's just that I think it's instantaneous. So it's that makes it a bit different. But I think I think it will. It is possibly the new area for development in terms of digital children's literature. But of course, with all the issues that arise, because if you're creating texts for children automatically, then there are a lot of issues with quality control and everything. But yeah, so I think that's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, I
Thank
think
you.
that we have another question from Molly. Hello, Molly, can you hear us? You have unmute your microphone.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. I was just wondering. I'm a children's literature author, and from an author perspective, what would you say is the kind of best way of engaging children in apps? And is it the children they should be targeting, or is it the parents who are inevitably going to be buying the apps? And then they'll be kind of hopefully engaging with their children in literature and sharing stories. So I wondered what you feel is, especially with the literary levels dropping or reading levels dropping, what's the best way of kind of getting them back up and getting people engaged?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it goes back to this concept of the dual audience of children's literature, and this idea that the adults, the parents, the teachers are always an audience of children's literature. And I think in this case, I think probably generally, but in this case, especially engaging the adults, parents, and teachers is very important. Because it's even harder to have access to these works, children to have access to these works on their own than with books, because books are more widely available. And so I think there is very little room to reach children without reaching their parents first in terms of digital children's literature. And I think there is a lot of explaining, because this is different from what people are used to. I think it's important to help them understand the value. And I think there is one point there that I think that I often think about, because of course digital technology it dominated people's lives, including children's lives. And so there is something about a digital literature that is different from these other digital experiences. And I think that is this space that is lower, that is this agency of the reader in participating and creating, but not the same way as a game does, in a more reflective way, in a more interpretive way. And I think this seems to children and parents really differentiate this experience from the other experiences that they enjoy very much because they're doing it. There are issues to doing it, but they are enjoying it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be engaged in games and social media so much. So I think there is also a lot of explaining what this is bringing to the table, what this kind of literature is bringing to the table, and explaining that this literature offers new ways of engaging with the digital world that is more reflective, that is slower, and that there is some value in that, because I think we will not be able to just simply forbid technology, and we need to find productive ways of engaging with technology and reflective ways. So I think that there is a way there. But definitely the short answer to your question is, yeah, the parents and the teachers and librarians are essential in this.
Thank you. And thank you for a great question, Molly. Like, it's this different perspective, that we also have to think about.
Yeah, we still have time, so please go ahead, ask your questions. Maybe you want to comment something. Maybe you want to say how it looks in your country. It's very interesting. In Poland, we don't have such initiatives like, let's say, digital archives or something like this. I've never heard about anything like this. So it's really, really impressive that you do that job. It's so difficult. As you said, all this equipment, some apps are only for one specific operational system. You need to use different equipment to do this. I remember when I tried to do this kind of research, it was so difficult. I was asking everybody in my family, do you have this specific, phone? Because it was even like this. This was only for one specific phone model. So it was impossible to get it in any other way. And I was wondering, maybe I missed something, sorry, but how does it look, this, you call this atlas, yes, atlas of this digital literature. Is it a kind of a website that everybody can search, and are there only descriptions, or do you of these specific literary apps, or you also add like there is a possibility to use it or to see the recordings, how it works, what the possibilities of the app are, how it looks? Sorry if I missed something.
No, yeah, I haven't described it in detail. I think it's a great question that I think a lot of people might not have pictured it. So it is a website. So it's a database on a website, and you have all the categories. You can search. I want works that have sound. I want works that have this kind of interactivity. I want works for toddlers. I want works for older children. In the case of our database, we have like this age range, which is always problematic, but it's also necessary for people to find what they are looking for. And then there are video recordings. Some of them you can get the file and you can install it in your computer. These would not be apps, but other types of digital literature you can possibly install it. Especially the CD-ROMs, they allow you to do that when they are recovered. And it also compiles the articles and the critical work that has mentioned that kind of work. So it's a very complete database with information about these works. And with this taxonomy system, you can make groups of works depending on the category that you're looking for. So it's very, very interesting how it's organized.
Yes, thank you so much. So you do a great job. Great job. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm building on what others have started before me. So I think that there is a lot of learning from the colleagues and from other initiatives. But it is very laborious, and as I was saying, when you have to reinvent yourself as a scholar. I'm a literature and educational scholar. I don't know how to build websites. I don't have this technical knowledge. So it is a huge challenge. And then I have to try to learn the minimum so I can dialogue with the people that know the technology well. And it is one of the sides that you have to develop as you follow your research object and your theme, and then you have to develop new skills to keep tracking it as it changes. So it's kind of how I feel.
But do you have any support, like financial support from your governments, a kind of grant for this, or?
Yeah, well, this is so difficult right now, right? And in Brazil, I think it's more difficult than in Europe or the US. But here and there, I get a little pot of money and then I invest in the project. And what I have is this undergrad scholarships for researchers or students beginning in research. So that's why I have a lot of people helping me, and that's huge help. And that's very, very important for them too. They learn a lot in the process. They learn about research, about children's literature. So I think it's a win-win situation when you have undergrads involved.
Yeah. The students are very helpful. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Okay, Mateusz, do we have any questions in the chat? No. I think
don't think so.
That's the situation that not everybody has, that our guests, from outside the University of Wrocław can have no possibility to use the chat. There is not this function when you are like a guest, not a member of the university society. Okay, so
I just want to add that I do have many questions, but I think that I will keep them for our meeting in Brazil during the Congress.
We have Molly again.
Molly had, yeah.
Sorry, could I maybe missed this? I've been traveling, but what's that you set up?
We can't hear you. Can you
repeat it?
Yeah.
What's it called? Your website?
Yeah, so my website is still not available, but it will be the Atlas of Brazilian. It will be inside the Atlas of Brazilian digital literature. I can put the link here. I don't know if people if people cannot see the chat, but it's all in Portuguese. But you can have an idea, or you can at least see how it works. I'm going to put here. And there is this research group that is the Observatory of Digital Literature, and that's the people who created the atlas.